We have a few questions from the audience.
My name is Keenan, and I'm in ninth grade, SES. And my question is, what was the hardest thing about making this movie?
I think that one of the things about making the movie was going to the exact locations where everything took place. There's not one false location. Sometimes when we make movies, we say we shoot a movie that takes place in Buenos Aires, we shoot it in Hollywood. But this, the producer Anat Singh and the director Justin Chadwick, their, love of authenticity, was so strong that they went to each place. By the way, the producer Anat Singh, the first time he voted, he's Indian, like one of the prisoners, like a guy named Kathy, in the movie. He's an Indian man, lived in South Africa, and until Mandela had the vote, they didn't allow Indians to vote either. So amazing. Anybody of color at all, any kind of color, couldn't vote. They were considered non-whites. So when you see Robben Island in this movie, it's Robben Island. When you see Soweto, those scenes were shot in Soweto. They look like newsreel footage, but they were actually staged.
My question is, was it hard to understand what Mandela went through, his experiences?
Well, the book was a great guide, and also the information that we know. And I've been lucky in my life that I met Nelson Mandela 3 different occasions. So I knew him a little bit, and the people like Anat and Justin Chadwick, who did the movie, knew him more. So, there was always an amazing thing about Nelson Mandela. He had such a great sense of humor. And the first time, that I'll tell you when I met Nelson Mandela was right after he got out of prison. This was even before he was president. He came to New York City and he was raising money. And Robert De Niro brought him to what's called the Tribeca Film Center. And we had everybody in the room. They took the entire restaurant and they gutted it. No chairs, no tables, no anything. And it was Eddie Murphy, and it was Oliver Stone, and Sean Penn, and Bette Midler. And if there was a movie star, on the East or West Coast, they were in that room. And Nelson Mandela talked, and then he stopped for a second, and you could see how authentic he was. He just started to laugh, and he said, "You're the reason I'm still alive." And people were like looking at each other. He said, "No, because you inspired me. It's not me who inspires you." He said, "Sometimes I think people look at the art of making movies and they look down on it." He said, "But we were prisoners, and every Thursday night, the one communal thing they had, the only communal thing they had that had any joy attached to it, was they all watched movies together, from the lowest ranking prisoner to the highest." And he said, "Eddie Murphy, I watched your entire career. I was with you in 48 Hours, and I was with you when you were a Beverly Hills Cop." And he talked about Robert De Niro and Sean Penn and the filmmakers like Oliver Stone. And he just touched all of us. And I always remember that the responsibility I have as a filmmaker is to remember Thursday nights and these prisoners.
What exactly from the book inspired you to make this movie?
Well, the last chapter, when Nelson Mandela is walking up that mountain, are the last words of the book. And it says, people are not born to hate, people are born to love. And I think that the idea that we're trained to hate, just stunned me, and I hope it stuns all of you, because it's unnatural. It's easier to love and it's easier to be friends, and we're just taught these terrible lessons when we're young. And it's something that we have to change so that our children and your generation doesn't suffer the same wars and stupid, actions that previous generations have suffered.
My question is, would you make more movies, and would it be helpful to portray movies for school that will help kids learn and interest them more, instead of reading a book, rather than be more entertaining and watching a movie and learning, inspired by it?
Well, I think, books, when I was 12 years old, I was 10, actually 10 or 11. I was playing, some sort of advanced cowboys and Indians, and somebody poked me in my right eye, and I have it operated on, and they gave me stitches, and they patched it up, and I looked like Quasimodo in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And this is a true story. I couldn't go to school. It was so horrible looking, and couldn't see, only through the left eye anyhow. So they gave me a couple of months off from 6th grade, I think I was in at the time. And next door to me was a librarian. Her name was Frances Goldstein. And I knocked on her door because I was so bored. I mean, TV wasn't like it is today with 500 channels. There were 3 and 2 of them didn't work. You know, I grew up in the 1840s. And so I asked Frances, you know, can you help me, teach me about books, literature? And she started me off with the Americans, you know, with the Gone with the Wind, which is pretty good soap opera. And then I graduated to some of the good Russians. I couldn't read like the advanced Russians like Dostoevsky, but you know, you read War and Peace, it's as good as Downton Abbey, or whatever, and it's so beautifully written, but it's a wonderful soap opera. And I learned a lot about literature, and that love of literature, and then later on, my high school teacher, you know, with that Giants in the Earth, got me into making movies about literature. So here I feel 2 ways in answering your question. I love books, I will never give that up, it's still my greatest joy. But I think movies can have tremendous influence. And I think if we make movies that are issue-oriented, you know, I think we can, you know, bring sanity, you know, to our world. We did a movie called Bully. I don't know if anybody's aware of that film. The Motion Picture Association rated it R. We had a huge battle, and we had a young girl out of Michigan, you know, 16 years old, who was bullied, and she got 600,000 signatures, and she helped overturn the rating. And that shows you one girl, we didn't do it, she did it. And one girl's efforts, one girl's actions, one girl out of nowhere shows up and steps up and changes the world. So with Mandela, I say this in a really, really good way. We didn't make this movie to make money. We did this movie to show what leadership can be in this country.